the opening session of the Asia Global Dialogue, you're discussing the question of global growth, but also whether business and policy are in step. But does that really go back to the question of whether the world has recovered after the financial crisis of 2008, and also whether there are constraints on all kinds of resources in the world? What are the key questions, would you say?
Well, we're in an unbalanced global economy. The advanced economies, roughly half. The total global economy are in for varying degrees of subpar growth. America, maybe half of its potential, something like 2% real. Europe, extended period of low growth. Japan, kind of unknown at this point, and with some negative feedback effect on the developing countries, particularly the European situation. And then we have, exits from very unusual policies that were designed to aid the recovery in the crisis. The latest example being tapering. I'd say we're in for a kind of best guess is it's going to be okay, with the bright light being the developing countries, particularly Asia. Business and policymakers are not, even on the same page. Business is busy adjusting. The American economy's recovery is almost entirely the private sector. There's dynamism in many, many economies in Asia and elsewhere. The policymakers are, in the advanced countries, are kind of gridlocked.
Another major issue at the Asia Global Dialogue is the question of jobs. Where will the work be, particularly as the world begins to stabilize and rebalance? Where will there be job creation in the future as you see that?
Well, there is a serious, employment problem in many parts of the global economy for somewhat different reasons. First of all, one needs to understand that economies don't automatically and quickly generate as many jobs as the demographics say we need. Second, we probably have a residual problem left over from the crisis of a big negative aggregate demand shock that hit the whole global economy. And then you've got these very powerful global and technological forces that are putting labor markets out of equilibrium, is the way I think about it.
Global value chains, finance, emerging market growth, and sustainability, these are all big issues that are going to be there and thereabouts where it comes to the dialogue this year. But how do you see these coming together, and what will be the takeaway for those attending the dialogue?
Let me start with the growth models one. So that with the approach that the Fund Global Institute has taken to that is to kind of dig really deep down and look at the growth dynamics and structural change and shift in the growth pattern at the level of a city that's done it really quite effectively here in the Pearl River Delta, Foshan. And so I think the takeaway from that is going to be a whole lot of things that have to do with what really happens. Not looked at from 30,000 feet, but down where business and government interact and infrastructure really gets built and rules and regulations and governance structures get changed. On the finance side, there's just a huge amount of change in infrastructure to be built. The global supply chains are just in high-speed motion, and our goal in this is to have a dialogue in which everybody walks away with a better sense of the direction of this change and the forces that are driving it. And then on the sustainability side, we all know what we're facing. I mean, quite apart from just basic environmental issues, that need to be dealt with in China and other places, we're in a process, unless it gets badly derailed, of tripling the size of the global economy. This global economy now is approximately $70 trillion, measured in the conventional way. And people have doubts about whether at that scale, the natural resource base on which, we operate on this planet is adequate. Well, if you triple it in size, then that question starts to get written in capital letters. And so I think what we're all sort of wrestling with is the challenge, essentially, of inventing new growth models.